It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our Campus Life Forum, Creating a Culture of Openness, Curiosity, and Dialogue. My name is Dr. Pat. I'm the Vice President for Campus Life, and what I'm looking forward to is for you all to have an opportunity to hear from our content experts who are here at the table to explain a little bit about the work that we do in Campus Life to ensure that our students have the skills, the understanding, and the desire to really dialogue across difference. I know that many of your students chose Brown because of the rigorous academic environment. I too chose Brown many years ago. I'm class of '94, medical school class of '98. But when I reflect back on my experiences here as a student, although my classes were amazing and my professors were incredible, the thing that I remember the most about my experience is everything that happened outside of the classroom. Where I lived, where I ate, who I hung out with, the people I had a chance to meet, the advisors who helped me understand opportunities to major in different topics, who encouraged me to study abroad. Really everything else that was happening outside of the classroom helped to make me into the person that I am. And so being able to serve in this role now to lead Campus Life is really quite an honor, because I know that the work that we do helps to make our students better people and helps them become leaders that really contribute to the world. We understand that in this moment in time, making sure that our students are prepared to dialogue across difference, to connect with people who are different than they are, to seek out opinions and perspectives that are different than theirs, and to understand cultures and experiences that have no similarity to the ones that they've had. We know that in this moment, that is what is critically important. When we see the discourse outside of campus, we are often reminded that not everyone holds the skill set that's really required to engage in these difficult conversations. And we think it's our responsibility to make sure that our students are prepared to do that. So for the next hour or so, through some questions and questions from you all, we're going to explore a little bit about what we do in Campus Life to make sure that our students are ready for the world and the opportunities that they'll have to really shape the environments where they live, where they work, and where they want to contribute professionally. So I'm actually going to turn it over to our panelists for each of them to give you a brief introduction, and then I'll be asking them some questions for about 20 or so minutes, and then towards the end of the session, we will open up the panel to you all to ask questions that are of interest to you. So maybe we can start with Anthony and work our way down.
Great, thank you so much, Pat. Can everyone hear me? Looks like it. Great, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Anthony Medeiros, and I'm the director of the Community Dialogue Project at Brown, or CDP, as you'll hear me talk about it. If there's one thing I want you to know about CDP, it's that in the classroom, your Brown student is learning how to marshal evidence to make a point. When they engage with CDP, they're learning how to listen. That's the main thing that I want you to take away about our work. So the way we do that work in the Community Dialogue Project is by advancing skills, attitudes, and practices on the Brown campus that enable students to engage across difference, to have authentic dialogue, to have hard conversations while still holding each other in community, and to really strengthen the bonds that allow for real learning and open inquiry to take place. Some of the main ways that we do this are through skill development workshop sessions on topics ranging from how to have a difficult conversation, how to listen actively and with empathy, understanding your own self in a situation of conflict, or how to imagine the perspective of others and ask them more about it. We also deliver a lot of this work directly through student facilitators to try to bring it to life so that we are marrying the content and sort of the best practices in the dialogue world with relevance for students and student leaders. So we've got a cohort of student facilitators that do these workshops and offer them to student groups or different campus partners. I think the last thing that I'll say, so I don't take up too much of the time, is we also think a lot about assessment in CDP. We've got clear learning outcomes for each one of these skill workshops where we see on average, between 3/4 of a point and a full point gain on a self-assessment that we ask students to do. It's a 4-point self-assessment on can you do this specific skill on active listening? Or do you feel more ready to initiate a difficult conversation? And we usually see after just 1 hour session, a pretty significant skill gain on those workshops. So I'll pause there. We'll have lots of time to talk today, but it's great to be here with you.
Thanks, Anthony, and hi, everyone. My name is Mary Jordan. I use the she series of pronouns, and I'm the director of the student experience in Campus Life. A big part of my work is I have now met all of your students through orientation. So bringing our new students into the Brown community and helping them understand the ethos that we have around dialogue, around open inquiry, making some of those connections to the open curriculum is a big part. Maybe fortunately for me, I get to focus on a lot of the foundational skills that allow students to do that. And again, that cultural piece. One of the beautiful things about Brown is that we bring in students from everywhere with all kinds of experiences and perspectives and backgrounds. And so some of them have really different ideas about what it means to dialogue, to share ideas. And so we get to talk about and bring them into what that means at Brown. And then we get to build some of the really foundational skills. You can't talk about the big issues until you can talk about our pancakes or waffles better. And so we get to practice some really low stakes engagement at orientation so that students can start to build the skills and confidence and mindsets around some of these conversations. A newer part of my work that I'm really excited about is thinking about the ways that the 600 plus student leaders who have student employment in Campus Life get to think about their work and that it can be so much more, and it really is so much more than a transactional work for paycheck while they're working in Campus Life at Brown University. And thinking about how they are developing the skill sets and mindsets that are serving them well in their whole life after Brown, not just their career, but their relationships, their volunteer leadership opportunities, and that the core university values, including dialogue, are reflected in that.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Helfrich. I use the He series. I'm Director of Residential Education. Similar to the other offices here, we have certain things that are unique. We get to one of the few offices that spend the life cycle with your students while they are living on campus. So we partner very closely with Mary's shop around new student orientation, how they come in, how they move into their first year community, all the way through the seniors that choose to live with us. We also had the opportunity to work with our off-campus students. So in a program called Block, which is Bernunians living off campus. So as your students go through their experience and move out into the community, we stay in contact with them. We also partner with CDP, which you'll hear a little bit more about, around how we train our staff to work with students around the open curriculum, around conflict that can exist. How do we get more comfortable with conflict? If we all thought and step back to the first time that maybe we lived with somebody, let's reflect on how well that went or didn't go. I'm seeing some nonverbals here. And so we oversee 140 community coordinators that are student leaders as well. They are embedded on the floors and they live with the students, and they are first point of contact right there, helping students as they are into lower lift conflict and understanding their own diversity and richness of the floors. That is something that is localized. And then we have area coordinators and assistant directors and myself above them to go ahead and support around that. And we'll get more into that in the questions, but I want to thank you again for being here and allowing us to chat with you.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Joey Forty. I'm Senior Associate Dean and Director of our Student Activities Office here at Brown. Our office oversees around 500 undergraduate and graduate student organizations and some spaces like the Stephen Robert 62 Campus Center, which I hope you all got to stop into and visit over on the main green. We also oversee a lot of large-scale event planning like Spring Weekend and Senior Week, and we have a team of 9 staff who work really closely with students in their planning for their events and their activities, but also a lot of interpersonal and self-development that happens while students are engaging in all of these activities in their different organizations. I also work really closely with our student activist population and oversee something called the Multi-Partial Team here at Brown, which is a team of staff who are dedicated to educating students around policy and supporting thoughtful and intentional activism and impactful activism that is also in line with university values and policies. And so that's a really exciting part of my work that I love to talk about. If anyone wants to chat after, feel free to grab me. But yeah, I think I'll be able to talk more about our work in depth as we move through questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caitlin O'Neill. I use the they, them pronouns, and I'm the director of the LGBTQ Center. I've been at Brown for about 5.5 years now, and I want to let you know that the LGBTQ Center is located at 22 Benevolent Street. It's right across from Keeney Quad, so if you have first years or if your students ever lived in Keeney Quad, it's very accessible, very easy to find. We're a beautiful, newly renovated building. And a lot of what I enjoy about my work is being able to work with over our 20 student staff members that we have hired. In addition to hourly staff members who do fantastic work, like helping to create different events that we put on for the community, whether it's promoting those events or doing important work with each other. We also have a program called the Gender and Sexuality Peer Counselors Program, who do fantastic work. And we actually partner with Anthony and CDP as well to get them trained on how to facilitate a range of different conversations about the intersections of gender and sexuality. We have students that are thinking about gender, sexuality, and diaspora and working on a range of programs this semester about that. And what it means to be connected to each other globally. We have students who are working on what it means to dream in relationship to gender and diaspora, or in relationship to gender and sexuality. And also have students who are doing really fantastic work on gender in the archives. So not only thinking about gender and sexuality in this moment, but working closely with the university library in order to think about LGBTQ identity over time. In addition to that, we also co-facilitate the Disability and Justice Student Initiative with the Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender, which is right next door to us. And they're students that do fantastic work in thinking about disability justice and just making more programs on campus accessible to students and having more opportunities to talk about it, what it means to be disabled or what it means to really show up for disabled people on Brown's campus, but also nationally and globally. So just so much of the work that we're doing is helping students to understand more about themselves so that they can understand more about the people around them and hopefully continue to build on that work and take it with them after they leave Brown.
Thank you all so much. I have to say, the individuals who are seated here, I have an opportunity to work with them every day, and it's really an honor to be able to work with individuals who are so dedicated and so knowledgeable, and really come into work every day to make the student experience that much more exceptional. So I just wanted to I was feeling a sense of pride standing here listening to all of you, so I just thought I would share that. So the first question, which is for all of you, is if you could share with the audience and the parents and families who are here, how do you define a culture of openness, curiosity, and dialogue in the context of campus life at Brown? Start with like a small question, very, very simple.
Are we popping down the line again?
No, you can go in any order that you like.
Okay, we can't let Anthony go first because then it will be, no one will want to follow. So I wrote down a couple thoughts about what I think about. It's an active and engaged and a humble intellectual community. It's not just about the absence of hostility, but the presence of proactive engagement with ideas that might be unfamiliar or even challenging to our students. It's a really key part of the ethos that we try to impart and give students a little bit of room to practice at new student orientation. And the last piece that really, when I was reflecting about the ways that I see this, the courage that comes with it. My kids are a little bit younger than yours. My youngest is 10, and she and her friends run around the house singing the new Taylor Swift album, and there's a song called Canceled, but the title Canceled is in all caps, and there's an exclamation point at the end. And suffice it to say, that is what the song sounds like. And I think that when I meet a lot of our new students, a lot of the fear around engaging in meaningful dialogue comes from this idea that I will say the wrong thing. And so we really try and impart this fail forward mentality so that our students know we don't have to say the right thing and that the community will meet us with grace, will help us learn, will help us rebound. And so I think that courage is another important piece of the culture that I see here at Brown.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Mary. I just want to echo that a little bit. I think for me, one of the key things is in normalizing being wrong, normalizing changing your mind when you're confronted with new evidence. I think that's something that is, of course, happening in the classroom, and it's something that we can echo on the campus life side as well.
I'd also add, I think that it won't always feel comfortable if we are really having free inquiry and challenging questions are being raised and we're confronting ideas that are different than ours. And so, yeah, so I think challenge, right, is a big part of it, that sometimes it will feel challenging and it will feel difficult and hard, and that is okay. I think if it's also grounded in a culture of respect and care. I just think it's important to note that it doesn't always wrap up tightly in a neat box, and we have dialogue and everything, you know, so I think making sure that students are comfortable with that level of uncomfortability while also providing, which I think we do, more than just the people at this table, campus life at large, provides the kind of resources and support to provide the processing skills that might need to be paired with that as well.
This question actually makes me think about, so something that I'm really happy that we offer through the LGBTQ Center is that we have 2 support groups that meet weekly. One is for trans and gender diverse students, and then one is called the Rivera Baldwin Support Group for students who are interested in thinking about the intersectionality of race, or intersections of race, gender, and sexuality. And one thing that I love about this space is, one, that it is co-facilitated by 2 staff members, so myself, and then with the other groups, somebody from counseling and psychological services. But we actually aren't a therapy group. We're a support group, which means we're really helping students to understand how to show up for and support each other, and that being essential, right? Not telling them how to feel or what to think, but rather encouraging them to find ways to support each other and be resources for each other. We recently had a student who walked in who was like, you know, I was sent here by counseling and psychological services because I'm a new student and I realized that I'm queer. And I got my first crush. It's never happened to me before, and I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to think. Who do I talk to? I don't know if right now I know enough about myself to have that conversation yet with my parents. Can you all talk to me? And my favorite thing about that discussion was actually being able to listen to the really fantastic things that other students said to her when she shared that story, and the ways in which they shared what it was like for them realizing things about themselves, what it was like for them to come out, how they navigated their first crushes, how terrible they were, how some of them actually were really wonderful, right? And helped her to feel less isolated and less alone. And for me, it's really about empowering students to be able to have those discussions with each other with guardrails, because we are in the room, and so we can offer our own perspectives as well. But just how eager, we have graduate students also that attend. To have a graduate student that said, I just graduated from college last year, and in the last 4 years, I'm happy to tell you that my life has changed a lot for the better. And then to also have a sophomore be there and say, I was you a year ago, and now I just have so many more connections than I ever had before. And so for me, it's really leaning on, I think you talked about the courageousness and like braveness of our students, and just having them lead us and helping them kind of become the best leaders that they can be.
I would agree with all of the statements that have been made. I'll try to take us in a little bit different approach. For me, as wonderful as our students are, we also want to help them lean in. Part of being courageous and curiosity is understanding when we make mistakes, being transparent leaders, transparent members of this community, and being able to say, oops, I didn't do my best, and how can I learn? I would challenge all of us to think back 4 years ago, and changes that we've had in our made, were those always easy, right? Curiosity, open dialogue, discourse, it moves us into an uncomfortable space if we're doing it right. Brown in each of our offices provides that scaffolding, that skeleton around students to let them choose how they engage with one another. But we do want to go ahead and say, when you make that bump, how can you see the person that you might have impacted in not the best way and own that so that you can go on your journey? We really want to foster an environment that says we can be safer, not necessarily a safe space, but a safer space, begin to open our wings and move. And so to me, that's really the ethos of that openness, that curiosity, that dialogue that happens. If we can do all of those other things well, that's going to allow our students to thrive.
Thank you all so much. I mean, I'm clearly biased for lots of reasons, but I do think, and I heard this in a lot of the responses that you gave, that in so many ways our students are eager to have these conversations. And it's true, they are a little bit nervous and they're anxious about making mistakes, but they're also not as frightened of the discomfort as I think that many might believe. And so I have found it really exciting to see just how willing they are to lean into those difficult conversations, particularly when they know that they have the safety and the structure that you all provide in all of these different ways. And so I'm curious, Anthony, this question is for you. Because your work centers on equipping students to engage in dialogue across differences, can you share a little bit about the frameworks or the practices that have proven most effective in helping students to have difficult conversations?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Pat. So I think of two examples. We approach this sort of both top-down and bottom-up. And what I mean by that is there are best practices, and there's also students as individuals. So I'll talk about each. So the first one, you said difficult conversations. That is actually one of the models we like to use, the book Difficult Conversations by Doug Stone and Sheila Heen. I think one of the things that I continue to see is that Brown students, they love a framework, they love some content that they can engage with, and that conflict and engaging in dialogue, those are skills. Yes, some people are naturally attuned to them, but anybody can learn it. Anybody can get stronger at that. So I think that's one of the things that's really worked well for us, is just putting really robust content and frameworks in front of students that they can grapple with and engage with and figure out what they want to take away. The second piece that I'd add is on the kind of bottom-up or personal development side. Our goal is to give students a toolbox and for them to take from it what makes sense for them to have their own kind of personal theory of practice. And one of the ways that I've seen that work really effectively and that I find really gratifying is we'll do kind of reflections with students on what's your default when you're in a situation of conflict or a situation of difference. And I'm always really satisfied when at the end of one of our workshops, we have students who come in saying that they're normally very assertive, make a commitment to listen more. And we have students who come in saying that normally they're really focused on preserving a relationship, say that they also want to make sure that they're speaking up for their interests and that their story's coming out. So I think that a good outcome looks different depending on which student, right? So that's what I'd say for two frameworks.
Thank you. Scott, I'm curious to know, as we're thinking about just how much work it takes to really help to establish these frameworks and give our students the skills, I'm wondering if you can comment about how area coordinators are trained to manage conflict and to promote understanding among residents. While I'm standing here, as you guys are all reflecting, I was thinking about my first year roommate here at Brown, and she was very, very different from me. So I am the child of immigrants. I'm from New York. I grew up in a very international community, and my first year roommate was a young woman from the South who was pro-gun and politically very aligned with more conservative thinking. So we could not have been more opposite. And we became very, very good friends. We lived together for 3 out of the 4 years of school. And so much of what we explored, we kind of did on our own because we didn't have these structures in place. So if you could talk a little bit about how those area coordinators might help students who want to have those kinds of connections, but maybe don't have the skill set and don't feel as comfortable doing it.
Absolutely. So we're very fortunate. Our area coordinators come in with a master's already, and a lot of their background deals with community building, engaging with empathy, helping students understand where they want to move through. As part of their onboarding, we have a 4 to 6 week curriculum that we move them through that focuses on as Anthony said, kind of understanding their own conflict style, looking at how do we foster empathy. We know from research that is one of the things that we can upskill individuals and students and professional staff. We help them get comfortable with the unknown and allowing students to figure out what their journey is going to be. So as well as listening, asking open-ended questions, understanding where students want to go, we also take a look at then how do we bring students in. So for instance, won't ask you for a show of hands, but if you were in ever a roommate conflict or an organization conflict, and students will come in and say, hey, can I change rooms? While we might be able to make that happen in the moment, we still ask our area coordinators to sit with students and to go through a mediation. That does not mean that they're staying together, but we want to impart those skills down so that they're going and having conversations at a lower level with their roommates, with a staff member who's there. And we follow very much a mediation fashion of both sides get to be heard. We come up with an agreement. We ask students to write that up. Then we look at that, and then we re-support that. We also take a look at conferences. We partner with CAPS in going through not an easy piece, but really thinking about how students are staying safe, especially around mental health. Our area coordinators also are the administrator on call, which is our 24/7, 365. So we get dialogues, questions from dean's notes, all the way through to I need emergency housing. And so we really try to look at that around where do we help students with our training move forward so that they're actualizing their piece. And so those are just a few ways that we bring training to the table, have them uptick that, and continue to reinforce that.
Thank you, Scott. Mary, so much of, there's a great deal of focus on orientation. I think people feel that when students are coming into a space, if you just give them the right tools right at the very beginning, then everything is going to be fine for the rest of the time. Now, we know that that's not true, but we do know that starting them off within a structure and giving them an understanding of our culture and our expectations and how we want them to engage in these different types of dialogues and how we want them to engage in conflict, we know that that's important. We know that sort of that setting is really important. So I'm curious if you can help us to understand how you introduce the values of openness and dialogue to new students at Brown when they arrive.
Thanks so much, Dr. Pat. I think about, we want students to understand our culture, and a really big part of orientation is we want to bring them into the culture. We want them to feel that this is their community. So we focus a lot on academic belonging and on social belonging. And honestly, these values of openness and curiosity and dialogue are so easy to translate to both here at Brown, right? We are, of course, our academic culture is marked by the open curriculum. And these values are, they're the perfect social complement to what is required to be successful in an open curriculum, right? Bridging disciplines and perspectives. Those require the same dialogue skills of listening and synthesizing to make connections between philosophy and engineering. Your students may also have mentioned to you that they can take classes what we call SNC, so satisfactory or no credit, and so they're not on a regular grading system a lot of time, and that does allow them to embrace that fail-forward mentality. It supports the culture of openness, it supports risk-taking in ways that I think are really conducive to what great learning looks like. We also do a lot of what I mentioned at the beginning, some of the foundation setting, some of the helping folks feel like you're not going to get canceled for saying the wrong thing, and helping us all feel that we're not going to cancel someone for saying the wrong thing in a safe and respectful culture. The One of my favorite things we do during orientation is your student took a survey before they arrived and talked to us and gave us feedback about how much they wanted to meet other people, how much they wanted to learn about folks who were different from them, how willing they were and actually excited they were to start those conversations, including ideas that would challenge or expand their perspectives. Down the survey, 5, 5, 5, 5. On a 5-point scale. And then we ask them to estimate, how do you think other students feel about doing those things with you? How do you think that they are eager to talk to you? Do you think they are eager to hear your perspectives that may be different from theirs? And they did not mark 5s all the way down the board. And we thought that's really interesting, and we actually shared that with them on day 1 of orientation, and we sort of showed them the disconnect and asked them to think about that disconnect, that actually everyone in this room is really open, curious, interested in dialoguing, and that you've in fact underestimated your peers' willingness and eagerness to do so. And that also helped us launch into some of those really helpful conversations and skills that we start in orientation and then continue throughout.
Thank you, Mary. I often reflect on conversations where belonging and identity are in, or seem to be, or might be assumed to be in conflict with openness and a culture of dialogue. And I think that we all know that nothing could be further from the truth, and that when you really affirm someone's identity and make them feel like they belong, you actually encourage them to engage in those kinds of conversations. I'm wondering, Caitlin, if you can help us answer this question. We know that the LGBTQ Center serves students of very diverse identities, and sometimes those identities, of course, are marginalized. How do you create space in the LGBTQ Center and across campus for both identity and affirmation and open dialogue, especially when there might be tension or disagreement?
Thank you for that question. One thing that really stands out to me, actually, in something that you just said, Dr. Pat, is just thinking about how important a sense of belonging is to being connected to the academic mission of the university. That feeling like you belong actually allows you to participate in classroom discussions and co-curricular activities and just be in lots of different places, and feeling secure enough to really challenge yourself to have these kinds of open discussions, right? And to put yourself out there with the understanding, I think back to Mary's point earlier, that the more that everybody understands they actually are reaching out for that kind of connection, right? And they can see each other, then the more meaningful those interactions can be. For me, one thing that actually comes up is that we host oftentimes throughout the semester a variety, or both semesters, a variety of community conversations about different kinds of things, right? A year ago, we had a discussion with students about the importance of platonic community in the LGBTQ community. And that oftentimes people think about LGBTQ identity as being something that's just rooted in perhaps like romance, right? Or attraction, but really, what does it mean to be members of a community of people who might have very similar experiences, right? But also diverging experiences, and to come together and talk about what does community look like to us, right? What do we want to prioritize and make really important, especially as we're forming community at Brown. And we do a lot of work with our students to prepare them for facilitation. We also often are there for those conversations. So again, if anything really does happen that they're unprepared for or they need a little bit extra help with, we can provide that. But one thing that I really loved about that conversation that year was that it happened on Valentine's Day. So we had a community of people who were like, I've recently been dumped. I'm not with anybody and I'm kind of depressed about that. Folks who were like, I'm actually not interested in being with anybody, and I'm so glad we're finally having this conversation about platonic community. And then people who just came from a variety of different like political beliefs, experiences, backgrounds, etc. I think one thing that sometimes even our own students forget, and this is why we remind them constantly, is that the LGBTQ Center is open to all students. And again, not everybody agrees on what it means to be LGBTQ, right? Or what LGBTQ community looks like. And students were really surprised by the different answers that students gave as we kind of had the facilitated conversation, and just some of their thoughts about community and what their interests were. And they assumed, well, we must all think and feel the same thing, right? I mean, we're members of the LGBTQ community, we have the same identity, right? But actually that wasn't the case. And so what we do is try to lean into those moments and then get students to tease out, well, what does it mean to you? Like, where are the points where what you're saying is converging? Where are we seeing points of where things are beginning to diverge in interesting ways? And how can we just be comfortable with that? And actually understand that if there's this much, like this level of diversity, right, within the LGBTQ community, or folks who may not identify as LGBTQ but have LGBTQ parents or friends or other members of their family, right, or who just care about like access and rights for the LGBTQ community, right, then imagine what that looks like expanded beyond our community. And if we can begin to have these conversations in meaningful ways in places where we might feel more safe and rooted, but also challenged, then it really empowers us and gives us the tools that we need to do that in other spaces as well. So really being thoughtful about how we set up spaces for those conversations, preparing students with the tools that they need to have them, and then reminding them that they have the capability to disagree and to lean into those disagreements and to talk about different points of view. And actually, to one of Anthony's earlier points, listen, like do deep listening. And then walk away from the conversation feeling a little bit differently about something than maybe they have before. And that is something I think that has just been really key for us at the center in terms of open dialogue, and that it's okay to disagree. What is not okay, though, I think, is not to sit with the full breadth of each other's humanity. So as long as we can do that together, we can arrive at some really interesting conclusions and have some fun. It was a fun discussion in the end, and then people at the end were just so happy to be talking to each other and exchanging numbers, Instagrams, making plans to do other things, because in the end, they realized even if we don't see eye to eye on everything, these other folks are really interesting and they're fun, and there's more things that we can do together to perhaps in the future maybe be on the same page about the discussion.
Thank you, Caitlin. You know, the fluidity and flexibility of identity, I think, is particularly important during this developmental period for your students. Having an opportunity to better understand their identity and almost try on different identities to see what's comfortable, what's not comfortable, what works, what doesn't work, and learning about other people who might self-identify in different ways. We know that student organizations are really powerful spaces for identity and expression. So Joey, I wanted to ask, how does student activities help to support organizations in balancing advocacy with dialogue across differing viewpoints?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. The team in student activities works really hard to help groups navigate that complex space between standing really firmly in their values while also engaging respectfully across difference. It's not an easy task, and we spend a lot of time with students in a variety of ways kind of tackling this, primarily through direct advising through individual student leaders and in student organizations, leadership development, both organically as things come up, but also really proactively in a structured way. And then I think also through logistical guidance around event planning. We're really encouraging student leaders to think critically about how they're engaging, that it's really important to stay within their values and their mission, but also that they're keeping in mind kind of broader community standards around safety, respect, inclusion. We focus a lot on helping students understand university policy so that their advocacy is impactful, but also responsible and safe. I think that we really want students to express themselves boldly, but we also want them to remember, and I think this has come up in other answers, that they're part of a broader community and that their actions and their messaging impact other people. And we build all this into the leadership experience, so it's not things that we're doing reactively or things that are an afterthought. We're bringing students together at the beginning of a planning process. For example, if there's a controversial speaker coming to campus or a debate topic that students are having thoughts or feelings brings about. We'll bring both groups together. We'll talk through the planning process so that the group that's executing the event can really accomplish their goals and have the event in the ways that they want to, while also incorporating ideas and thoughts from students who are feeling impacted by that topic. And we've had some really great conversations, and I think students have felt their voices were incorporated in ways that made them feel like they could actually attend the event and participate, and that it felt really open and welcome. And I think that's really important. We spend a lot of time talking about intentionality and thoughtfulness. And I think we want groups to be contributing to a campus culture that ideally is grounded in dialogue and care and respect, which I think we've heard a lot about. But it doesn't happen by accident. It takes a lot of thoughtful planning on the front end and a lot of intentional and deep reflection post events and post activities and post things that happen around campus. And so we offer trainings around inclusive leadership, difficult conversations, partnering with Anthony. And I feel really lucky to do the work that I do. I feel like we get to see students kind of show up fully as themselves while also growing and learning and developing as they engage with people with different ideas and different belief systems, and feel really privileged and grateful to be able to work with our students and all the people on this panel and in Campus Life, because it's just really a pleasure to watch all of your students grow and develop over the time that they're here at Brown with us.
Thank you. And thank you all for really just thoughtful responses and sharing just how much work goes into creating this environment for students to really thrive at Brown. I forgot to mention at the very beginning that we don't only have the audience members who are sitting here in the auditorium with us, but this is being live cast. We also have audience members who are not here but who are joining us virtually. And this is a moment for us to answer any questions that you might have, those of you who are seated here, those of you who are logged in at home. If you could utilize the QR code that's projected above to type in your question, those questions will come up to me right here on my computer, and I'll be happy to share the question with any of the panelists, or if you have a specific panelist that you'd like to direct the question to, and we will be certain to answer it. As we wait for those questions to come in, I'm going to ask the whole panel just one other question, but like I said, if you have questions, please go ahead and send them in. And the question that I had, and really anybody on the panel could answer this, is what advice do you have for families who want to support their students in becoming better listeners, advocates, and community members?
You look ready, Anthony.
I'm ready. I'll give you a deep one and a practical one. I think the deep one is opinions are based on experiences and stories. I think asking your student, when you hear about a new opinion or a new perspective that maybe you haven't heard from them before, the story underneath it models the kinds of questions that we all need to be asking. I think encouraging them to do the same, that when they encounter a perspective that maybe feels totally different, try to get them to unpack that and find out what's underneath. The really practical one is there are a lot of amazing resources in Campus Life across all of Brown. Tell your student to come and find us, send us an email, knock on the door, and we'll get them involved in some of this great programming.
Anthony, if I could also build on that, we're available. Our office is available to all of you. Our information is public and out there. Reach out to us if you're not sure how to provide that guidance to your student where they are at right now. You've done a great job. They're here. We want you to lean into those conversations. I would say if you could really work, as Anthony said, to guide and buffer your student to seek out the resource. So if you're not sure where they should go and they're not, give us a call. But we want to have you encourage them to also seek us out. I've been here 4 years, and the amount of parents that get a call from that will say, my student's so busy. We have a short time with your students, and we want to help develop them. We want to make them really good citizens and balancing all aspects of their life. And so if you could encourage them to please come talk with us. We want to help them. If they're experiencing something that's a struggle, we're not opposed to walking to students to different offices, making calls, making introductions. We are here to support them. And support doesn't always mean that they get what they want, but it means that they get what they need. And so that's one thing that I would say practically, if you could help us with that part.
Okay, Joey's going to love this one. I think if you could encourage your student to try a student organization or group that is about a topic they maybe don't know a lot about. I think about when I was in college, one of the ways I learned a lot and became a really great listener, practiced my listening skills, was by joining the flag football team that one of my friends just like grabbed me by the ear and dragged me to. But we really hone our listening skills when we're willing to be novice, when we're willing to go into a space where we don't know a lot. And again, I think that's a really low stakes way to sort of train our brain to be that way, and open ourselves up for all of the other things that we've been discussing today. You're welcome, Joey.
Thank you. I love that. I would also add, I think even though it may not seem like it, they're still learning from you, even if they come home and act like they know everything, and they're watching you, they're learning from you there. So I think even if they come home from a break and they seem maybe a little different, or they're exploring a new idea, asking them to tell you more about that, and asking questions that give them space to continue to explore at home and with families, I think is also really important to their growth and development.
And I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as one of the student identity centers or campus life engagement centers if I didn't rep our other folks who aren't here right now. So there's the LGBTQ Center. There's also the Brown Center for Students of Color. There's the Global Brown Center for International Students. There is the Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender. There is the Office for Military Affiliated Students, and we have an office for undocumented first-gen and low-income students. We all work very closely together because our students don't live single-issue lives, and neither do we as staff or faculty members. And we do lots of different kinds of programming. We have lots of student positions, just so many opportunities for students to come and have the kinds of experiences that will help them to become better advocates, better listeners, et cetera. And so encouraging them to come out to our centers to meet some new folks. It can be an identity that they hold. It can be one that they don't. All students are welcome in our centers all of the time because we really, truly, and deeply love the work that we do with them every day, which is just helping them understand more about themselves and the world. And in addition to that, something that I do with my students that I feel like is effective is modeling those behaviors back at them. What I can tell, I think similar to what Joey was saying before, is that the students I talk to really love their parents and they really love their families. They really look up to you, again, even though they totally pretend like they don't all the time. But they come to us and then talk about you when you're not there. And I think just demonstrating some of that deep listening and being able to hear about the different experiences they're having, the changes that they're going through, holding space for that in a meaningful way, and then actually engaging in a real dialogue with them about that. They love that. And a lot of what they're trying to think through and think about right now is how their relationship to you is changing, but in really beautiful ways, right, as they're coming into their own. And so being able to have that conversation with them, I think having it at home helps you to have it in so many different places, just like having it in our spaces allows them to go home and have it with you. And so understanding that it's a two-way street, but in a way that I think is really nice and kind of exciting.
Thank you guys so much. As the mom of a first-year college student, I am often reminded of how little I know. And he is the person who likes to remind me. We do have a question from a family member in Washington, or from Washington, D.C., Aletta Margulies, and they ask, or I'm just going to read the entire question. Thank you for the thoughtful presentation. As an alum and the parent of an alum, I understand that there are professors who are fearful of allowing students to speak out in class when they voice unpopular viewpoints. Are you, I think that's for all of us, working with professors to share your techniques with them? I think it's a great question. I'm going to allow our panelists to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in the co-curricular space with academics, and then I can talk a little bit as well. Or I can go first if you want me to go first.
I can share.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So absolutely, and I think one of the first things that I'll say is that There's a range of dialogic approaches that can be used in a classroom that make space for all viewpoints and kind of turn the temperature down. And there are plenty of outstanding Brown faculty who are already using those approaches and techniques. So we really try to learn from them. There are also external models that are useful. We have centers on campus like the Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning that has done already extensive work on supporting faculty members on things like difficult conversations, and we're always in touch with them to think about what new content and materials and tools can we offer and bring to campus. So this is something that's certainly on our minds.
I can share a little bit about what's happening across the university as well. You know, the Community Dialogue Project really lives in campus life and is very student-facing, but it's meant to be part of a much broader initiative that is a presidential initiative called Discovery Through Dialogue. And that is an initiative that is meant to span across the campus to help us all engage in these difficult conversations, to help create a community where we feel comfortable doing that, and to also provide us with the skills that we need in order to do that in a very fruitful way. There are certainly academic sessions that happen all year long. Our Office of Diversity and Inclusion right now is actually sponsoring 4 different sessions where the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, Matt Gooderl, will actually moderate conversations between different individuals, different professors from different universities, different types of scholars who will be engaging in those difficult conversations in order to help model that behavior for our students. And that's really just one of many of the academic opportunities that we have to make sure that what we are teaching the students to do, the faculty are also embracing and helping to support and teaching the students as well. Just last week, I traveled with the president, with VP Gooderl, with the dean of the college, Ethan Pollack, and with the president's chief of staff to the Constructive Dialogue Institute, which was a 2-day workshop for leaders in higher ed to really think critically about how we are bringing those skills and how we are building a culture of dialogue across difference to our campuses. Brown was one of 8 universities that were invited. Leaders from all 8 of the universities came, and we all spoke to one another about the challenges that we face, about the work that we're doing that's going really well, about the opportunities that we have, and we exchanged ideas and best practices as well to make sure that we were seeing different opportunities for the work that we want to do when we come back to our campuses. And so we actually came back with a whole roadmap for how we want to continue rolling out Discovery Through Dialogue across the campus, and a great deal of that will be through faculty engagement and continuing to build what we're doing in the student engagement space as well. We also know that, and this became clear as we were having these conversations with the other universities, that none of us has the exact right answer to this concern or to this question, and that we're all trying very different things in our different spaces, trying to be sensitive to the different cultures that each of our university spaces has, and what our students expect from us, what our faculty expect from us. And what was nice about the meeting itself is that we all leaned into being okay with being wrong, being really vulnerable, sharing the challenges that we had. And it was really reaffirming for me that so many leaders of institutions of higher ed really across the country are trying so hard to do this work in a really thoughtful way, and actually providing quite a bit of resource to this work because they know just how important it is. So we were in good company. We'll continue to remain in conversation with that cohort, bringing best practices to the work that we're doing here on the campus. Okay, I think that was the only question. I don't know if anyone else here has any questions. Please, go ahead.
Yes, I'm curious. Ms. Jordan used the term rebalance, and that put me in mind of a process of rebalancing. I'm just curious to know if you have more to say about the issue of rebalance, because something that's kind of roared up from the panel is that a person can be temporarily destabilized by new and different experiences. What's going on in the process of rebalancing?
I don't remember saying this. This is great. I don't know.
I mean, is it a return to the core values that they brought to campus, and they themselves remind themselves that they have core values that still function. Do others take them in new directions and they find solidity and balance there?
I mean, Mary, if you don't mind my jump again, I think it's probably a combination of all of those things, because students are entering into this space with, to your point, very different core values, frankly, different attachment to that core value. Some of our students are coming in feeling really affirmed by the values of their family. Some are feeling curious about values that maybe were not represented within their family structures. So they're all coming in oriented in a slightly different way. And what they're looking for in the educational experience might look similar or different on that very first day, and will likely evolve in sometimes similar or sometimes divergent ways during the 4 years that they're here. So that destabilizing that you talk about, which is true for any student who's entering into this environment for the first time, what we try to do in campus life is to help stabilize that a bit. And sometimes that stabilization actually does not happen through the lens of reconnecting them with their parental or familial values. Sometimes that destabilizing is simply acceptance. Like, you are here at this stage of your life, and we are totally fine with it. However you're showing up, we're going to meet you where you are. And then some of that rebalancing that happens is really more about full acceptance and an expression of understanding and support for whatever their process is. So it's certainly not one size fits all. I think the talent of the individuals who work in campus life and really work across the university is the ability to assess where students are, to encourage them to express themselves and feel comfortable with where they are, and then to engage them throughout the process and for however long they stay with us in a way that really makes sense to them. And that's very much a personalized approach to each student and to each experience.
Yeah, that's absolutely fabulous. It all hangs on the word acceptance, and thank you. And just, I want to make an observation, and that is that this panel has reminded me how crucial it is to consciously or intentionally build culture, and that's what you're doing. It's really, really fabulous work.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I promise I did not pay him to say that. But thank you. And again, I really want to highlight and elevate the work of the entire Campus Life team. These are really some exceptional examples of all of the work that happens across Campus Life, and I think Campus Life is simply an example of all of the work and the culture of the university. Again, I'm very biased. I came from this university. I came back to teach and to be an administrative leader, but I cannot imagine a better place in the world for students to really learn and grow and learn to be leaders for tomorrow, which is really exactly what we need right now. It was really our pleasure to spend some time talking with you all about the work of Campus Life. As our panelists shared, if you have any additional questions or questions that you have specifically for them, please feel free to come down and speak with them. We'll also be around all weekend long, so when you see us, please stop us, please come and say hello, talk to us about your student, ask us any questions that you have. We're really here to make sure that you feel just as comfortable as your students feel as members of the Brown community. Thank you all again. It was really lovely to be here with you.